So, before I get into this and my accidental error, I'm just going to say, one of the things which I'm going to say is that I think I'm going to be done with this on Friday, because the next one's going to be a more light-hearted one, because I don't want to go into more of the serious stuff. The finale. But I might split that up, but I didn't want to start one episode, because it's a very long one, and I do want to talk about some fun stuff, because I do think it has fun and important stuff to the finale, or the 4 final episodes. I will roughly be talking about them and putting them in the same episode. It'll be like da da da, and I'll just be calling it part 1 and part 2. Also, this is here again, because I thought the next 2 episodes were going to be on the history of Koro Sensei, which it kind of is. This, if you see this here, I talked about it last time, how she revealed herself and how that sort of had a thing. That, I think, actually is 1.5 episode. The episode before this and half of this, where you get the reveal of the identity in the last half of this, and the majority of the next episode, a bit of what happened as a result, and how people check and have a couple people talk to each other, getting the view of how does this reveal impact them. So obviously I'm going to be talking about something that reveals Koro Sensei's actual backstory. So 3, 2, 1. Why was the Reaper so weak? Because he wasn't the original Reaper. So we don't know how long the Reaper, or at least the one that was in the last episode, did his assassination. We assume that Elise has done some work under the name of Reaper, but he wasn't the original one. Koro Sensei was. The most deadliest assassin? Which is interesting. It kind of, at first, when you see it, it's like, wait, how did this go to this? Because you see Koro Sensei definitely in the first episode, and he's fun, he's light-hearted, he's a little bit sarcastic, but you have a whole army that's I know it's being able to kill me, you can't. So it's very much, you can kind of tell why. But this one he's more colder. And as you learn more, you want to learn more, how it happened, what happened. And you do know that supposedly this person here is blaming him for her sister's death. But what does that mean? He is an assassin. Did he kill her? But she's the scientist. And he's captured. There's more and more questions. And when you slowly reveal what happened, including why the sort of secret experiments, and then trying to shut it down by hiding everything, which led to her death. And they actually cared for each other, which is interesting. There's also a certain point that this comes up, but this is more interesting in that. So I'll talk about that more, I think, on Friday. Probably Friday, Saturday, I don't know. At this point, I don't know. I'm, again, like I said at the beginning of the episode, video. But the one thing that I definitely think is interesting is this shows the interesting point. Because you sort of see more about what this is. And then you see that when the mouse was doing it, and how that exploded, because originally Koro Sensei said, do you know the thing with the moon? I did that. I didn't mention it because besides having a thing of showing his power, quote unquote, you don't really get much from it. But I'm mentioning it now because, well, he didn't. A mouse with these similar experiments, he exploded. And the mouse is dead. So the one thing that I like is, even though Koro Sensei is, I'm destroying the earth, ha ha ha, what is happening is there's a sort of thing of the cells will basically shrink down and come together and combust. which basically means that he's currently in a volatile state. He doesn't do this deliberately, which again questions why he just doesn't do so. Why he doesn't allow his death to happen. Obviously, there's a certain thing of, I don't think he wants to die, but and when you learn the scientists from 3E, that was the old teacher, then it makes sense. It's trying to take these students and trying to lift them with their confidence to try and see if they become sort of like better, which explains why he was of his thing of the second blade and say, oh, if you don't do this, you will leave. Obviously that doesn't happening because the game was rigged, but this explains a lot about why is he interested in lifting the students, because the person he cared about, that was her final wish. And it's really interesting. Obviously the next part is this one, where you get the team split up. And there's a huge thing of I don't know why, I think it was red versus blue. But it's very much a fun story of all of this stuff. And explaining of like, kill or save. I think it does two things of this. Because you don't really get to see their levels on an individual basis, you basically get to see some of them, definitely some of the more known ones, do some of the tricks that they have learned throughout like this year. And it allows them to like, oh, here's how you can do something. You do see a bit later, definitely, this part will definitely be on Friday, but this is one part where you start seeing them being able to sneak around and do all that stuff. And you see the two things, because it's, scientists are working on a cure, but why shouldn't we cure it? And there's arguments either side. Some saying like it's the final like presentation, it's the final show. Some people being like, definitely, even she's like, well, I tried, it didn't work. Maybe we should. And it's really interesting. And at the end of the day, even though Karma had a choice, sort of like having one hit, he actually saved. So I say saved. They're playing paintball. They're not dying. Nagi-san, by basically not stabbing and saying, why don't we be friends? And it's like, hey, and like sort of act more friendly. And one of the things that happened is they eventually see how they can get there. With one suggestion, which I think they do suggest in the final part of this episode, as one thing of like, so some of the experiments might be in space. So let's go to space! Which, that's gonna be the next episode, because it's, I think, interesting. Again, the next episode is gonna be more lighthearted, that's one of the things. But it basically shows, I also like that he's like, it was like, let's have this game. It was like, people. It's like, I don't mind what side. You can choose. It is your choice. And it really is interesting. Because it is going towards the end. And going towards the final. Which I think is really good. Really interesting. And I like. And there is one more thing that happens in the next set of episodes, which I find interesting. But I do like these. I do find these really enjoyable. And again, these episodes are so interesting about what's happening next. But again, there's going to be one episode, besides one bit of a section, that's mostly going to be like mostly lighthearted. Then Friday and Saturday, maybe Saturday, I don't know, would be the final episodes. It's been a long time. But I hope you enjoy. I hope you like this. And good night.